Hi, everybody. Good evening. I'm Sharon Beckman-Brindley, and I will be helping to guide us through the evening tonight, not alone, but tonight. We wanted to tell you a bit about the Ethics and Reconciliation Council that has actually been a part of IMCC for about 5 years, but not too many people know about it, so we thought it would be nice for you to know about it. It's the EAR team, and we have the EAR team here. I'll introduce them all specifically in a little bit. It's a way for us to explore as a community conflicts and difficulties that may arise. I was thinking as I was preparing for tonight, we've been spending all this time exploring the Brahma-Viharas, these wonderful heart qualities of boundless love and unending compassion and sympathetic joy for goodness. Next week we'll be exploring equanimity a bit. And I was in my mind placing the practice of those qualities next to my awareness of yesterday and the remembrance of Memorial Day and wars. Wars. There was a cartoon in the paper that had a picture of a fighter from all the wars, each of the wars that we've been involved in over the many, many years. It's like, how really do we practice these heart qualities in the context of conflict? In a way that doesn't just lead to more dead bodies or dead things lying about. Or, alternately, in a community like this, that doesn't just lead to people leaving. I don't like this that's going on, so I'll just leave. How do we navigate? It's certainly a question for our own individual practice, How do I deal with this that's coming up without going to war and without abandoning myself? And then it's certainly a quality of our inquiry for us together as a community. We wanted to develop a way as a community to work with difficulties that might arise within the community. And so we want to tell you about that a little bit tonight. Next week we'll talk about equanimity, and the definition of equanimity is understanding what it means to stand in the midst of all experience with unshakable balance, to be responsive yet unbroken. So yet another glowing aspiration for us in terms of working with conflict. And when we really look at these Brahma-Viharas, we kind of think, yeah, but that thing on the evening news, or that politician, or here in our community, that thing that's really annoying. How do we stand in the midst of this with unshakable balance, with kindness, with compassion, with sympathetic joy? How do we do this? Thomas Merton says, true love and prayer are learned in the hour when prayer has become impossible and the heart has turned to stone. So maybe true practice of the Brahma Viharas are learned in the hour where we think, I can't possibly do this. I can't stay in this community and work with this. I can't possibly deal with this. True love and prayer are learned in the hour when prayer has become impossible and the heart has turned to stone. And often we don't like this kind of guidance, this kind of gradual guidance. We want something to happen quickly. We want to kind of, either say something or do something or have it fixed or whatever. But like all of our practice, it's an investigation, it's an inquiry. So we wanted to tell you a little bit about how we are proposing within IMCC to explore these kinds of difficulties, these kinds of challenges. And so we wanted to introduce our EAR team. This is the EAR team, Ethics and Reconciliation team. Here's one of the EARs, co-chairs. This is Julie Convisor. And the other co-chair is John Conover, who's down there at the end. Phil DuPont is sitting in the middle. Liz Reynolds is sitting next to me. Jeff Frazier, Jeff Frazier, and Bill Detmar. There are two people who are missing tonight who couldn't be here, Georgiana Reed and Judy Grismer. So we have quite a bunch of us who are part of the EAR team. And each one will speak to one of the ways that we are offering our community resources for dealing with challenges. And Julie will start.
Can people hear me? Is that okay? Well, hello everybody. I'm going to give a very brief overview of EAR, and I'm a word person, so I'm going to just start with the definitions of the word ethics and reconciliation. Ethics is a set of moral principles that govern a person or group's behavior or conduct. And reconciliation, to restore to friendship or harmony, to make congruous. So I like that because I think it captures the essence of what our EAR Council, the basis for it is both to have a community sense of what our ethical principles are, our moral principles are, and also a means by which to establish or reestablish harmony or friendship when there has been conflict or it needs repair. And Buddhist ethics provides a foundation for our community life. As a lay community, we are guided by the 5 training precepts that you might be familiar with if you've ever been on retreat or even gone to, they've been named in teachings here quite frequently. And those are abstaining from killing or violence, taking what is not given, sexual misconduct, unwholesome speech, and intoxication. So these 5 precepts are also the basis for the IMCC Teachers Code of Conduct, which will be touched on in a little bit. So we are a community of human beings, and inevitably conflicts will arise. That's the nature, it's part of the nature of being human, and certainly part of the nature of suffering among human beings. But here in IMCC, we hold the intention of mutual respect and reconciliation when these conflicts or difficulties arise. The health of our community is not measured by the absence of conflict, but by our willingness to find effective, responsible, and compassionate means of resolving that conflict. So there are certainly corporations and organizations that have effective conflict resolution that might result in people being removed or leaving or being punished in some way, but those may not be compassionate means. So one of the things that distinguishes our approach here is that we want both effective and compassionate means. So what does that mean exactly? That the intention is to attend to and learn from conflict. as part of our practice. So it's part of the off-the-cushion practice for us all here as a community. And Buddhist conflict resolution is not based on good or bad, blame or guilt, winning or losing, offenders or victims. Instead, hurt, fear, and anger are taken seriously through forums in which everyone may speak honestly, safely, and completely about their own experience and feelings. So that's kind of the foundation of the Buddhist approach to conflict resolution. Again, slightly different than a hands up, hands down vote about something where people just go off and kind of feel unresolved. In looking for resolution, Buddhist practice values dialogue over silence, reconciliation over estrangement, forgiveness over resentment, confession over accusation, and atonement over punishment. And because these are challenging to approach conflicts in these ways, and sometimes these ways are in fact quite unusual in our culture, IMCC's Ethics and Reconciliation Council is here to offer support for these processes in our community. So that's kind of our purpose.
This is John Conover.
Yes, this is me. There'll be some overlap between each of us to prove that we're organized. And so if you hear something twice, you can say that we're trying to really emphasize it and make a continuous, logical presentation. Conflict is part of our lives. We can't say we really relish it or we don't like conflict prone people, but it is part of our life, part of our culture, maybe more in this culture than in others. I couldn't begin to say. And most institutions have some way of dealing with it, whether it's the civil law or the criminal law or at work, amongst friends, amongst lovers, amongst parents and children. You find paths how to deal with it. There's not a lot of conflict within the IMCC, but we think it's prudent to be aware that it's possible. And frankly, are intrigued with, we want to handle it well. Not only here, but in getting some skills that we, 6 or 7 of us, and all of you can use in your life, even though the rules are different. One of the basic Buddhist practices, and I can't give you a quote where it comes from, but as Julie said, is we favor dialogue over silence. Bring it up. Bring it up. And we favor reconciliation over estrangement. Doesn't mean you have to become best pals, but let's try to keep working to make it work and not walk away. To keep from freelancing, let me read what we have undertaken to do. The ERA Council is to provide initial confidential consultation to anyone within the IMCC community who has a concern about the functioning together of the ICC community. Any ERA Council member may be contacted by anybody, any of you, with a concern about IMCC decisions, finances, procedures, policies, customs, attitudes, practices, language, or behavior within the community. These may be minor or significant. They may involve only one member or groups of people within the IMCC. The ERA Council member will hear that concern in whatever way seems appropriate, including email, phone, or in person. I mean, it covers everything here. As somebody said, it's not a problem with your mother-in-law. We can't go there. All these people other than me are professional, in that field. But most anything, I mean, if you feel a little creepy about something, you wish this is a little different, bring it up. It's not only policy, that we can debate. It's just if it makes you feel a little weird, we don't want you sitting on it. Think about it first, of course, for a couple of minutes, but then contact any of us. We started 5 years ago as a standing committee, the IMCC. I'm going to read this, really, because it says people on this group are IMC practitioners, widely respected for their maturity, integrity, and lived practice. So, there you go. We are available to any community member who wants help in dealing with questions, conflicts, or grievances within the community. Members of the council are nominated by the executive committee and elected for terms of 3 years. The ERA council may be expanded to meet the needs of any specific issue at the discretion of the executive committee of the IMCC. The ERA council is comprised of at least one teacher, one board member, and one general community member, and then others. It also doesn't have to be just your problem. If it's something like you think you've talked to some people and 3 or 4 of you or half of you think, yeah, this is kind of should be up for discussion, bring it up. So I don't mean to start a fissure, but it's you or a commonly felt problem. Thank you.
And Liz Reynolds.
Evening. So what happens when you have a concern? First of all, as John has already said, you can approach any of us personally or through email, but we also have a tab on our website marked EAR, and you can bring about your concerns there if that's better for you. We want to assure you that any concern that you bring up is completely confidential. And there's an informal process that begins first. We have also a formal process, but I'm going to be speaking mostly about the informal process. So any of us can be used as sounding boards for you. If a concern arises, we're here to facilitate a deeper personal reflection, also as a source of guidance for resolution for your issue or concern. We're available to be mediators, and if there's several parties involved, then we can be witnesses for those discussions. And there's multiple options for hearing a concern, and that also has to do with what you're needing. So we can provide information as we meet personally with you to problem solve. We can also direct you or the parties of conflict into to the appropriate teacher or committee or board member, or even to outside resources that you might not be aware of. As we are debating what to do to help you best, we always collaborate with each other, and we find consensus about how to best proceed. And together as committee members, we decide whether the existing resolution that we find together is sufficient or if deeper inquiry is needed. And we do want to emphasize that this could lead to a broader conversation if there's an issue that is deeper within the community. We could and are open to opening a larger IMCC community dialogue if there's an issue that affects us all. But if the concern continues to be serious and unresolved, then this informal process merges into a more of a formal grievance process. But we do want to emphasize that most concerns that have happened and that we foresee will just be taken care of in this informal manner. Thank you.
And Phil DuPont.
Yes. Hello. I'm going to briefly describe the formal grievance process. And that process starts with a written statement of a grievance or a concern in the form of a letter to the ERA committee, or council, rather. And there's an expectation that there'll be a response to that statement within 2 weeks, letting a person know, that their grievance has been received and heard, and that a process will be initiated for the most part. Perhaps not, but for the most part, we'll address that as a formal grievance within EAR. And from that point, a consultation committee would be put together of folks on the committee, on the ear committee, who don't have a personal relationship or some other connection to the concern, so that we can operate objectively and with compassion and confidentially as well. And at that point, the fourth step is that there would be a formal investigation that would involve interviewing, really trying to understand as fully what the concern of an individual or a group might be. And then the final step would be a response back to the person who had made the initial grievance. And again, all of this is held in confidence, so the people who are involved in the investigation process obviously would know the names of the people that they're talking with, but that information is not shared outside of the committee. So we do hold people's privacy as well. Thank you.
And Jeff?
So I wanted to briefly address our commitment as a community and as a committee to the security and safety of the community. And although we think this would be a rare occurrence, one of our commitments is to assure the security, safety, and general well-being of the community. So if anyone has a concern about that, about safety or security, then we would ask that you bring it to an EAR member, or you could bring it to a board member or teacher for that matter, because time can sometimes be critical in a situation like that. And we have, again, a formal process for dealing with that should it arise. And real briefly, it involves bringing the concern and hearing the concern, and then our quickly formulating a strategy to assess it. Is there a legitimate security concern in the community or for the community, either in one individual to the other or from the outside? We would initially, in a sort of informal way, try to diffuse it, and if that was insufficient, we would then do a more formal follow-up. We do have members of the community that have lengthy experience in this area, and they would probably be the ones that would handle the safety or security concerns should one arise. But we just want to let you know that we thought this through. We don't think this is a great likelihood, but that there is a mechanism in place should you have a concern, should a concern arise. Please let us know ASAP. And then the committee will review it after the fact. If necessary, we'll do a post hoc analysis of what happened and what transpired. But if you have any concerns along that line, please let us know. Again, you can do so in person, or you can go to the website, to the EAR tab, and just shoot us an email from there, and you'll get a pretty quick response to that kind of concern. So,
Mm-hmm. Bill?
Good evening. So, clean up batter. I'm going to talk about teachers and teaching. Two things. We're going to talk about kind of the formal ethical framework the teachers are operating under. So you have that education. And then the other is more informal. How do you connect to what the teachers are teaching and get feedback into the loop? So let's just start with the formal stuff. Obviously, as a spiritual community, the teaching and the communication of the teachings for 2,500 years is core to what we do. And I think the teachers, the board, and all of you would say that the relationship between the teachers and us practitioners and students is a sacred one. And everybody views it that way. Now, there's many roles that teachers play. Some are like tonight, with Sharon leading, sharing her wisdom with us as a group. but there are many other situations that are more personal that involve retreats and interviews and check-in type things, and also one-on-one. So teachers play many different roles, and these ethical standards and guidelines are designed to kind of cover all of those situations. Now, essentially, you would not be surprised with what these guidelines are. They're 4 pages. They're available on the website if you want to dig into them. I'm just going to read a few things to highlight kind of the intention, and then we'll get on to part 2. So, as a teacher, every one of the teachers has signed one of these and has made this a commitment. As a teacher or leader representing IMCC, I agree to the following, and I'm just going to summarize. I agree to hold myself as a steward of safe and sacred space by maintaining clear and personal and professional boundaries. All right. I agree to undertake the practice of the 5 precepts as set forth in the guidelines, as you just heard them mentioned earlier. So walking the walk. And I agree as my purpose as a Dharma teacher or leader to serve students' practice and personal exploration, and to avoid any activity or influence that is in conflict with the best interest of the students. And there's a very particular piece in this on personal relationships, including sexual relationships, and a very strong statement about the inappropriateness of that and how that should be managed. So most of you would know that these are foundational to any healthy relationship between people engaging in spiritual or other practices, but it's important to know that we take them serious, the teachers particularly take them seriously, and that if there were ever an issue in this area, that they would be brought to this group under the conditions that you heard about and resolved that way. All right, part 2. How do the teachers do all the wonderful things they do? There's a list of active teachers, which this is a recently printed new version of this. It has all of our active teachers on the back. There is, in addition to these active teachers, a committee called the Guiding Teachers Council, GTC, that's made up of, I think, 5 teachers who are not only active teachers, but are administratively very active in organizing the curriculum for the Sangha. That's Tuesday nights, that's series like you're hearing with Brahma Viharas, that's retreats, workshops, etc. I have had the privilege of being the board representative on that committee, so I've gotten to see it in action, and I can say there's so much thought that goes into creating the program here. And the thing to encourage you is that if you were to have specific feedback on the teaching, feedback on the programs, things that you'd like to see that you're not maybe seeing as much as you want, or things you'd like to see less of, or ideas you have for themes or series or whatever, there is a vehicle for doing that. First of all, feel free to talk to me directly. Obviously, feel free to talk to the teachers, as you always do. And if you would like to share it with other members of EAR, do that too. The point is, the teachings are really a kind of a collaborative effort, both the teacher and the student, to come up with topics and practices that really help us all on our paths. So please take advantage of that if you wish. So we've done a lot of talking, and as was pointed out in the beginning, conflict at IMCC might not have been the first thing you were thinking about tonight. And maybe this is the place in life where it's the haven for many of us. But I think what you're hearing is that we all want to be intentional about how we bring the way we practice and part of a community here, from here out and out in, and try to do that together. So we wondered if anything that we've said has made you think of something that you'd like to talk about. Questions you have?
Yeah, my question is that, we're not operating in a vacuum, and the society at large has a variety of issues and conflicts that arise. To what extent would the committee be involved in involvement with potentially helping to resolve conflict that was outside of what you might consider as your general scope of affairs?
Neil, I'll offer a couple of responses to that. One is it's a bit of a work in progress. And the reason is there are so many different ways that theoretically either individuals or we as a group could be involved, especially there's so much going on in Charlottesville in particular, that there's so many different ways that we could be involved. And one of the questions that we're actively exploring is maybe a similar set of guidelines about what will guide us in both in terms of the values and the integrity with which we respond to those, and the choices that we might make about what sorts of circumstances we might become involved in. We're in the process of actually developing sort of a position paper about that. There are quite a number of people in the community who are helping to put that together. It's not just coming from the board or from the teachers. And the other thing is that we are involved as a community in at least one organization in the city that is attempting to maintain a presence and a direction of working with conflict in the city, and that's the Clergy Collective. And even within the Clergy Collective, even within that larger community, that too is a work in progress as the clergy struggles with what exactly is our role as spiritual leaders and as a spiritual community in helping to guide whatever arises in the community. I guess the best I can say at this point is that your question is a very active one for us, and we're exploring what does that mean for us as a spiritual community to be involved in the larger community. Yeah, Julie wants to add something.
Just to answer very specifically to your question about the EAR committees, specifically this committee's action, the purpose of this particular committee, people up here, is actually to serve internally in IMCC related to conflict arising within our community. So Sharon was speaking more to IMCC's exploration as a community with how it connects with conflict outside of our Sangha. But we here, our mission is actually quite limited to internal experience here.
This particular community.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. With the exception, actually, that there is some disagreement within our community about how much engagement there might be beyond the boundaries of our community, how much engagement there might be in social issues or social action. So one of the ways that currently that there is a bit of, I don't know whether to call it conflict exactly, but some disagreement within the community about exactly how we might land ourselves in that in that regard. But yes, it's not really, at the moment, it's not part of the EAR committee itself. It's sort of a separate, to the extent that anything is separate, it's a, it's a bit of a separate inquiry and a separate discussion. But a very active one.
I guess I have two questions. One is, I haven't been coming for a very long time, so I'm wondering, is this a new committee? Did this exist for years and years previously? Or is this kind of a new thing that's come up? And the other thing is, if it is new, I'm curious about the history of what brought it about.
It's actually not new, Betty. We've actually, we've occurred to us that we should probably tell people about it. The committee has actually been formally organized for 5 years, and a little bit informally before then. And what brought it about was our awareness that there were some issues that were coming up and that we didn't really have a mechanism for people to feel that they were being noticed, listened to, heard, responded to, and that we felt that it was a deficit. So it was sort of a kind of teacher/board inquiry. Let's put something in place so that we can do that. So there were real incidents, but it was well before the current kinds of social issues have become so pronounced. So 5 years ago.
I just wanted to thank you for what you've shared. I think just to hear something like this is really beneficial. And every time that I come, I learn something new. And I feel like I'm a very beginner at meditation and even being in a community. But I'm very thankful for it. I'm not sure how to pose this, and sometimes I don't even know if I need to say something, but I was encouraged that this might be good to have a dialogue rather than to keep silent. And sometimes I talk too much, so if I do that, just let me know. I've had other spiritual practice before kind of meditation, and I came to a committee and kind of shared something, and it was really frightening because there weren't any women. It was a whole male. The leadership was totally male, and it was quite a few of them, and I think they were very open-hearted and very kind, but it was still kind of scary. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's really helpful for me to see that there's some women. I just wonder, like people of different color or different backgrounds, how they might feel if they needed to come to somebody. And it's just one of those hurdles. And I know I've operated sometimes in fear rather than love, and so I'm growing in that. But I just kind of wondered how you might address that as a group, because when I look around here, and as a community, I want to see more, and I just wonder how can we go forward a little bit with that.
Right. What's your name? Sue? That too, Sue, is a very active inquiry. It's been, at this point, well, I'll say that we've been very aware of that for quite a number of years. Been very aware of how uniracial our community is, and very curious about what we can do about that. And what we've been doing is we started working, Bev is in the background there. Bev was a real leader in guiding us, what, Bev, 6 years ago, something like that, that we started working with Ruth King, who's a racial activist and a teacher, to say, help us, teach us what we can do. And basically, over the years, we've done quite a number of workshops educating ourselves about our own whiteness, our own bias, our own confusions in that way, and developing what are now, as Liz, was referring to as the White Awake groups. Where this will go, we don't really know, other than to say, like, and as in response to Neil's question, it's not something that we ignore or take lightly, but and we share your pain about it, and our own curiosity about how we will navigate that going forward. And indeed, part of our involvement in the Clergy Collective is a very active effort to address that. I'm one of the representatives there. Anne Marie is sitting at the end of your row. She's another one of the representatives to the Clergy Collective. And Susan Kaufman isn't here tonight, but she also is the third member. And the Clergy Collective is an interfaith and interracial community of spiritual teachers and pastors who are working very actively to cultivate more integrated communities, both within the communities and within the larger community, kind of in response to Neil's question. So, yeah, thank you. But if anyone has, a thought about that, go back to Bill's, and Liz's comments about, bring them to us, because we're certainly open to inquiry there. But thank you, Sue. Yeah. And it's really nice to have that named out loud as a working edge in our community. So thank you. Heather, where's the...
For Sue and other members of the people here tonight who may not know much about the larger insight meditation communities all over the country, have been wrestling with this issue. And one of the seeds that were planted many years ago was to reach out and to train persons of color and other backgrounds that are different to this white community that we are. And we are beginning to see this not only take root, but blossom into many wonderful Dharma teachers who the hope is will be moving into communities and offering what I think we all long for. So.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Heather. So it is 8:30, and we will end our formal program tonight. If you have more questions, we're all here. Come up and ask us, or send them through the ear tag on the website. So thank you.